are some lives measured in decades, others in millions of years. The Karoo keeps time differently. Its landscapes hold the memory of vanished worlds, buried beneath mud and rock, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover them. Bruce Rubidge has spent a lifetime reading that landscape, not searching for treasure, but for evidence. Fragments of bone, fossils, the remains of creatures that last drew breath 250 million years ago. To most of us, a fossil is an object. To Bruce, it is a sentence in a story still being read. Each discovery reveals another step in the long evolutionary journey, tracing the path from our reptilian ancestors to the first mammals, and ultimately to us, modern Homo sapiens. His work is about perspective. For more than 4 decades, Bruce has helped reveal one of the Karoo's greatest secrets, that these ancient rocks preserve the most complete record on Earth of the transition from reptilian ancestors to the first mammals. If Africa is known as the cradle of humankind, then the Karoo may well be the cradle of mammals, a place where the story of our own beginning was written, and where the next chapter is still being formed.
Richard, I grew up on a farm in the Karoo where there was a collection of fossils. And because I grew up with a collection of fossils, I never really realized that it was different from other farms. And it was Grandpa's collection of fossils, which he had found in 1934, after his daughter had come home from school one day and said to her father, "Daddy, what are fossils and where do they occur?" So Grandpa said, "Well, let's go for a picnic and see if we can find a fossil." And they went out and they found a really beautiful and large skull of a flesh-eating animal with very big teeth. So Grandpa then contacted Dr. Robert Broom, who is the Doyen paleontologist of South Africa, and Broom said to Grandpa that this animal lived about 250 million years ago. And he also said to Grandpa that it was a new species that had never been seen before. Well, I think that all was a wonderful thing for Grandpa, and was something that he'd never thought about. So when Broom asked him to present it to the Transvaal Museum, Grandpa responded by saying, "No, if that animal has lived on my farm or been on my farm for 250 million years, I'm sure it doesn't want to move now." And that's really what started Grandpa's collection of fossils. And so I was born into that. And so there was nothing really special or anything about that. But I do recall that at about the age of 2 or 3, I was where my dad had a whole lot of laborers building a motorgate. I collected this piece of concrete. Now, I didn't think it was concrete at that stage, and I got onto my tricycle and drove down the 3 kilometers to my grandfather's house on my tricycle, and I took this to him and I said, "Grandpa, here's a fossil for you." And Grandpa took it, and instead of saying to me, "It's a piece of concrete," he then took it and he said, "That's a fantastic fossil, just give it to me for a couple of days." And so Grandpa then took over this fossil, and in 2 or 3 days later, he gave it back to me, and it had an eye and a mouth, and you could see even a tooth sticking out over there. So this probably was sparked my interest in paleontology. At the age of 5, I found my first fossil. It was a skull of a Gorgonopsian, which I found in not far from our house on the farm, and I guess that probably was part of my whole starting in paleontology. Then I decided that I would like to study this one day, and that is because there were always paleontologists visiting, particularly paleontologists from Wits, but many from overseas, particularly France and the United States. And I was always fascinated by these people, and they always had an interesting story to tell. And I thought that I would like to do that one day. And so when it came to study it, after leaving school, I did a degree in geology and biology, particularly zoology at the University of Stellenbosch. And this I just found fascinating. It blew my mind, and especially Geology 1. I really enjoyed Geology 1 because suddenly all the rocks around me were telling a story, and they told me how they formed, how they got there. And that was a whole new experience to me, and I loved that. The question of deep time is a problem for people. And in the time that I've been a lecturer at university, I found that it's the biggest problem that people have. They don't understand the long time periods involved in the age of the Earth and in the development of life on Earth. So that is something that's very interesting. It's never really been a problem with me because I was born into it. And so I've accepted the ages of millions of years, and because of my upbringing, I've become used to the idea that life has progressed over a long time period. But what I really find fascinating is the remarkable geological record of South Africa and the fossil record. We have some of the earliest evidence of life on Earth at 3.5 billion years ago. That comes from Barberton. That is bacteria, blue-green algae, that sort of thing. And then we have, in southern Namibia, some of the earliest evidence of multi-celled organisms, but that's only at about 550, 600 million years ago. So it took a long time from the origin of life to get the first multi-celled organisms. And then life just took off after that. And so we find that from 500 million years onwards, we get fishes originating, then fishes giving rise to amphibians, and reptiles appearing just a little bit longer than 300 million years ago. And the Karoo is an amazing place because it records a history from 300 million years ago to 180 million years ago. There's no other place in the world that has that long history of life on land over that long time. And that's the time that reptiles radiated into different forms, gave rise to lizards and snakes and dinosaurs and crocodiles and birds on the one line, and on the other line, the origin of mammals. And the Karoo is particularly known for the origin of mammals because we can trace in the different rocks of different ages through the Karoo, we can trace how these early reptilian type creatures changed and eventually gave rise to mammals. So in the uppermost and in the youngest rocks of the Karoo, together with the oldest dinosaurs in the world, we find the earliest mammals in the world. It's the only place in the world that has that whole story. So for me, deep time has never been a problem, but it is a problem for other people. Indeed, it is so. And if we look at the development of life on Earth, you find early ape men appearing sort of probably 7 million years ago. That's when we diverged from the ape line. But in South Africa, we got a record from these in the cradle of humankind from 3.5 million years ago. And then South Africa really is blessed with an amazing history of human development and the development of human culture ultimately. So modern Homo sapiens has been here only about 200,000 years, and then moved out of Africa to populate the rest of the world from about 80 to 90,000 years ago. That's a really nice question, because we humans think we're the pinnacle of development or evolution, if I can call it that. And I think that's extremely arrogant. Life has progressed over a very long time period and changed from 3.5 billion years ago. And we've had forms giving rise eventually to mammals, and humans are really just one form of mammal. So to think that we're any different to apes and to other animals is really taking it a long stretch. I haven't answered your question very well. It depends how you view evolution and how you view humanity. We've seen species come and go through time. And in fact, 99% of all species are extinct. So I don't think there's anything different. Life will progress and life will move on. And if humans are removed from this earth, something will take their place. That is what the story, or the fossil story, tells us, and what the fossil record tells us. So I do think that humanity has played a big role on Earth. We've changed ecosystems, we certainly have, and what our future is depends on how we care for the Earth. I love the Karoo. I grew up in the Karoo and I love this place. And for me, it's always wonderful to come back. And now that I'm living here, every day when I wake up, I just think how wonderful to be here. But when I lived in Johannesburg, for me, a real joy was to be able to go out to look for fossils in the Karoo. To go out with my team of researchers, we stay in tents, very simple living, and you live under the stars and dependent on the climate around you. And for me, to every night look out of my tent and see the stars and see how big the universe is. The Karoo stars and the Karoo skies at night are just something amazing. And to stand there and look at the stars and to think, wow, we are really very small in this whole story. But I've had a wonderful career. I've had wonderful satisfaction from what I do. I love looking for fossils. It's not always easy. It requires sometimes a lot of energy to remove them out of the rock, and it's sometimes very hot, especially the Karoo in the middle of the summer is hell. But at the end of it all, when you've got your fossil and you're back in the laboratory and you look at it and you think, wow, it's lovely to have such a beautiful specimen to work on. Well, while you're looking for fossils, you have a lot of time to think, and because you really spend your day walking around looking for evidence of prehistoric life, bits of bone sticking out of a rock. That's what you're looking for. You've got a lot of time to think. A lot of what you think is, hell, I'm getting hot now, or I'm getting cold now. But there are other times that you say, wow, this is a wonderful experience, and you think, I'm so privileged to be in this environment. I do believe in God. I believe in a spiritual power. Certainly, I'm a strong believer in that. There's an element of life, or element of our being, that cannot be explained yet. And I do believe there's a certain spirituality in the world. That's what I would say, yes. Okay, thank you.
This is the photograph I'll remember him by.